So you're making $75,000 a year, maybe even $85,000, and you're looking at homes in your area, and every single house that isn't a complete disaster is listed at $450,000. You run the numbers, you check the mortgage calculator, and you realize that even with 10% down, your monthly payment would be like $3,400. And you're sitting there thinking, how is anyone my age actually buying houses right now? Yeah, that's not an accident. And today I'm going to show you exactly why the math doesn't work anymore, why it's not just in your head, and what actually changed in the economy to make homeownership feel completely impossible for our generation. My name is Dan, and I spend way too much time thinking about why housing has become the single biggest wealth transfer in modern American history. If you're someone who's been told you just need to save more or cut back on avocado toast to afford a home while watching your rent eat up 40% of your income, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Because here's the thing, this isn't about you not being financially responsible enough. The game has fundamentally changed, and nobody's explaining the actual math behind it. Let's start with what everyone can see. Home prices are insane right now. The median home price in the United States is sitting at around $420,000 as of late 2024. But here's what most people don't realize. It's not just that prices went up. It's that they went up while everything else was happening at the same time. Look, in 1984, the median home price was about $79,000. The average 30-year mortgage rate was around 13.5%, which sounds crazy, right? But the median household income was $22,400. Now, if you do the math on that, a median priced home cost about 3.5 times the median household income. Fast forward to today, median household income is roughly $75,000. Median home price is $420,000. That's 5.6 times the median income. And here's where it gets really interesting. Mortgage rates, even though they've come down from their 2023 peaks, are still hovering around 7% for a 30-year fixed. So let me show you what this actually means in real dollars. Let's say you're buying that $420,000 house. You've somehow managed to save up $42,000 for a 10% down payment, which is already a massive achievement, by the way. Your loan amount is $378,000. At 7% interest, your monthly payment just for principal and interest is going to be about $2,515. But wait, we're not done. You've got property taxes, which, depending on where you live, could easily be another $400 to $600 a month. Homeowners insurance. That's jumped dramatically, especially if you're in a state prone to natural disasters. Let's say $200 a month. PMI because you didn't put 20% down? Add another $280. Your total monthly payment is now around $3,400 to $3,600. Now, here's the rule that mortgage lenders use. Your housing payment shouldn't exceed 28% of your gross monthly income. To afford a $3,400 monthly payment under that rule, you'd need to be making about $145,000 a year. But remember, the median household income is $75,000. Do you see the problem? The median American household cannot afford the median American home. That's not a personal failure, that's a systemic breakdown. Now you might be thinking, okay, Dan, but why did this happen? Like, what actually changed? And this is where people get it wrong. They blame one thing: greedy landlords or foreign investors or millennials wanting too much or whatever their preferred scapegoat is. But it's actually four major economic forces that collided at the same time, and most people have no idea they're even happening. Force number one, the 2008 housing crisis aftermath. Here's what most people don't realize about 2008. After the housing market crashed, something weird happened. Home builders just stopped building, and I mean really stopped. From 2009 to 2012, new home construction in the U.S. fell to levels we hadn't seen since the 1940s. We were building about 500,000 to 600,000 new homes a year, but the U.S. needs about 1.5 million new homes every year just to keep up with population growth and household formation. So for like 5 straight years, we built way too few homes. That created a deficit of about 4 to 5 million homes. And we never caught up. Even now, we're still building fewer homes than we need. It's basic supply and demand. When you have 4 million fewer homes than you need, prices go up. Way up. Force number 2, interest rates hit zero, and then they didn't. From 2009 to 2021, we lived in this bizarre economic environment where interest rates were basically zero. The Federal Reserve kept rates pinned down to stimulate the economy after the financial crisis. And you know what happens when mortgage rates are at 3%? Everyone who can possibly buy a house does. Everyone who can possibly refinance does. Suddenly, a $400,000 house has a monthly payment that's almost affordable. But here's the psychological shift nobody talks about. An entire generation of homeowners locked in 3% mortgages. My neighbor? He's got a $600,000 house with a 2.875% mortgage. His monthly payment is like $2,500. If he sold that house today and bought the same house at current rates, his payment would be $4,500. He would have to be absolutely insane to move. So everyone just stays put, which means fewer homes hit the market, which means prices stay high. The average homeowner now has about a 3.8% mortgage rate. Nobody wants to give that up. The housing market has essentially frozen. Force number 3, housing became an investment vehicle. This one's going to make some people mad, but here's the truth. In the last 15 years, housing stopped being primarily a place to live and became primarily an investment vehicle. After 2008, investors with cash bought up foreclosed homes by the thousands. Companies like Invitation Homes, American Homes for Rent, these corporations now own hundreds of thousands of single-family homes. They're not buying them to live in them. They're buying them to rent them out and generate cash flow. And look, I'm not saying all landlords are evil or whatever. But when you have institutional investors with billions of dollars competing against a 28-year-old trying to buy their first home, who do you think wins that bidding war? There's a report from MetLife Investment Management that showed institutional investors bought about 90,000 single-family homes in 2022 alone. That's 90,000 homes that could have been starter homes for first-time buyers, now owned by companies whose entire business model is to rent them out forever. Force number 4, your wages didn't keep up. And here's the one that really gets me fired up. From 1979 to 2020, productivity in the American economy went up by about 61%, meaning workers were producing way more value. But wages? Wages only went up about 17% when you adjust for inflation. All that extra value workers created went somewhere. It went to corporate profits, to shareholders, to executives. It didn't go to the people actually doing the work. So, while home prices were doubling and tripling, your paycheck was barely keeping pace with regular inflation, let alone housing inflation. Between 2020 and 2023, home prices went up about 40% nationally. Wages went up maybe 15% if you were lucky. The math just doesn't math. Now, here's what makes this even worse. There's this psychological trap that people fall into, and I see it all the time. You're sitting there watching home prices go up every year, and you think, if I don't buy now, I'll never be able to afford it. So you stretch yourself. You put down 3% instead of 20%. You buy a house that's really at the top of your budget. You tell yourself you'll grow into it. And that maybe that works, but here's the thing. You're now house poor. Your entire financial life revolves around this mortgage payment. You can't save for retirement. You can't build an emergency fund. One unexpected expense and you're putting it on a credit card. This is where it gets really interesting. There's this concept in behavioral economics called loss aversion. People are so afraid of missing out on home ownership, of being left behind, that they'll make objectively bad financial decisions just to avoid that feeling. But here's what I want you to understand. Being house poor is not better than renting. A house that destroys your financial stability is not an asset. It's a liability that happens to have an address. Look, I'm not sitting here telling you renting is amazing. Well, because here's the reality. Rent's expensive too. The median rent in the US is about $1,950 a month. In cities, it's way higher. I'm in California, and you're not finding a decent one bedroom for under $2,500 in most areas. And here's the thing about renting that makes it psychologically brutal. Every year, your rent goes up. In the last 3 years, rents have gone up 20 to 30% in many markets. Your landlord raises it, you've got no control over it, and you're just stuck. Plus, you're not building equity. That $2,000 a month just evaporates. You're making your landlord wealthy while you're stuck on the hamster wheel. So people look at that and think, well, I might as well buy, even if the payment's higher, because at least I'm building equity. And I get it, I really do. But here's what most people don't realize. In the first several years of your mortgage, you're barely building equity anyway. On a $378,000 loan at 7%, your first payment of $2,515 breaks down to like $2,205 in interest and only $310 toward principal. You're basically renting from the bank for the first decade. So here's the part where I'm going to step back and look at the really big picture, because this is about more than just housing. What we're watching in real time is the end of the American middle class as we knew it. For decades, the pathway was clear. You graduate high school or college, you get a job, you work hard, you save up, you buy a house, you build equity, you retire comfortably. That was the deal. But that deal is broken. And it's not because this generation is lazy or bad with money or too obsessed with iPhones or whatever boomers want to say. It's because the economic fundamentals have shifted. Housing was the primary wealth-building tool for the middle class. According to the Federal Reserve, home equity makes up about 65% of the average American's net worth. If you can't access homeownership, you can't access wealth building. And we're seeing this play out in the data. The homeownership rate for people under 35 has dropped from about 43% in 2005 to around 38% today. Meanwhile, the home ownership rate for people over 65 has stayed steady at about 80%. Older generations are sitting on massive home equity. Younger generations are locked out. This is the largest wealth transfer in American history, and it's not from old to young. It's the opposite. Okay, so after all that doom and gloom, here's where we talk solutions. Because look, complaining about the system doesn't help you. You've got to work within reality. Here's the truth. You probably can't afford a house in the city or suburb you want to live in. I know that sucks. But you might be able to afford one 30 to 40 minutes further out. This isn't about lowering your standards. It's about being strategic. If you can work remotely, even part-time, that commute becomes way more manageable. I know someone who bought a house in Riverside County, California instead of Orange County. Same house would have been $750,000 in Orange County. He paid $485,000 in Riverside. Yeah, it's a longer drive, but he's building equity instead of throwing away $3,000 a month in rent. This is one of my favorite strategies. You buy a duplex, triplex, or fourplex using an FHA loan with just 3.5% down. You live in one unit and rent out the others. The rent from your tenants covers most or all of your mortgage. You're living for free or close to it while building equity. And here's the thing. FHA loans let you do this even if it's your first home purchase. Yeah, being a landlord has its challenges. But would you rather deal with a tenant or deal with paying $2,500 a month in rent forever? Option 3. Wait and invest aggressively. Now you might be thinking, Dan, are you seriously saying I should just give up on home ownership? No. I'm saying if the math doesn't work right now, don't force it. But use this time productively. If you were going to put $2,000 a month into a mortgage, take that same $2,000 and invest it. Max out your Roth IRA. Max out your 401k. Put the rest in a taxable brokerage account in index funds. Here's the math. $2,000 a month invested at an average 10% annual return over 10 years is about $411,000. That's a massive down payment. That's buy a house in cash in some markets money. Meanwhile, the homeowner who stretched themselves thin with a massive payment has been house poor, unable to invest anything, dealing with maintenance costs and property taxes. There are multiple paths to wealth. Homeownership is one, but it's not the only one. And look, on a bigger scale, we need to start demanding better from our policymakers. We need zoning reform to allow more housing to be built. We need tax incentives for first-time buyers. We need regulations on institutional investors buying up single-family homes. We need wages to actually keep pace with cost of living. This stuff doesn't happen unless people get loud about it. Vote for local candidates who prioritize housing affordability. Show up to the city council meetings. Make noise. Because if we don't fix this, an entire generation is going to be locked out of wealth building forever. Here's what I want you to take away from this. If you feel like homeownership is impossible right now, you're not crazy. The math backs you up. The system is legitimately broken. But broken doesn't mean hopeless. It means you have to be smarter, more strategic, and more patient than previous generations had to be. And yeah, that's not fair. But fairness doesn't pay the bills. Run your numbers honestly. Don't buy a house just because you feel like you're supposed to. Don't compare yourself to your parents who bought a house at 25. They were playing a completely different game with completely different rules. Make the decision that works for your financial situation right now, not the decision that makes you feel like you're keeping up with everyone else. And remember, wealth building is a marathon, not a sprint. Whether you're buying a house, house hacking, or investing aggressively while renting, the key is that you're doing something intentional with your money. If this video helped you understand why housing feels so impossible right now, go ahead and smash that like button. Subscribe if you want more content breaking down the real economics behind the financial decisions you're facing. Drop a comment and let me know your housing situation. Are you renting and saving? Did you buy recently? Are you thinking about creative solutions? And hey, if you're feeling overwhelmed by all this, you're not alone. We're all figuring this out together. I'll see you in the next one.